Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Crime Country. As always, I am your host, Nick Barksdale, and today we are joined by a phenomenal guest, and that is Dr. Michael Aamodt. Many of you who are familiar with serial killers, in-depth research relating to true crime, and more importantly, serial killer statistics are instantly going to be familiar with who he is, because he is none other than the creator and the mind behind the serial killer database at Radford University. And so, without further ado, Dr. Aamodt, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, happy to do it.
Dr. Aamodt, for my subscribers and for people who aren't familiar with the subject, would you define what is a serial killer? Do experts actually agree on a definition, and is there a controversy surrounding the very definition of what is a serial killer?
Sure. If you ask 10 experts for a definition, you're going to probably get at least 10 different answers. So there's not a lot of agreement. So what I like to do is I use the FBI's definition. And according to the FBI, serial murder is the unlawful killing of two or more victims by the same offender in separate events. So the key part of that definition is two or more, and then the separate events, because that's what's going to separate it from a spree killer or a mass killer. Now, the previous FBI definition was three or more separate events. So when we were doing our database, we had to go back when they changed the definition in 2005 and start adding the people that were two or more. Now, kind of with that definition, though, things like gang killings and contract killings would qualify as serial murder. And the question is, are they the same thing? They fit the definition, but they're very different types of people. Some researchers will use minimums instead of two. They might use something like 5 or 6, and maybe even add other conditions such as a cooling off period or a particular type of motivation. But again, experts couldn't agree on what a cooling off period actually meant. And so basically talking about separate events makes more sense. I like to actually use the term, instead of serial killer, I actually like to use the term multiple event killer, because when the term serial killer was initially coined, supposedly by Robert Ressler in the mid-'70s, even though there are references to that term really going back into the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. But when that term was coined, it was to describe murders that were committed in a series. And the problem is that many of the people that fit the definition of a serial killer, they don't really kill in a series. So, for example, you might have a person who's killed 3 people over a 30-year period, but they kill when they get angry. So they might, let's say, kill a spouse, spend some time in prison, get out, get angry at a neighbor, kill the neighbor, spend some more time in prison, when they get out, kill somebody else. So it meets that definition, but it's not really a series. And we also kind of like to separate what we call organizational serial killers from the others. And that's not to be confused with an organized versus disorganized. Organizational serial killers are people such as gang members or cult members or members of the mob that kill really as part of an organization. So you can have, for example, a gang member that kills as part of the organization, and that person's going to be very different from the kind of the traditional serial killer, if there is such a thing. But you also have gang members that kill because they get mad at people, for example. It's really not part of the organization. So I guess that's a long way to say the key definition is really just that two or more in separate events, but you get so much disagreement about what the actual definition should be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's a good point to point out, is the fact that in many cases, gang members, and when you think of it, even terrorist syndicates could easily fall under that term as well. Do you think that there's going to be an effort in the future to try to separate those more definitely, such as like, for example, gang killer instead of a serial murderer?
I think there will be. And one of the things and maybe one of the most surprising things I found in doing this research is that that term serial killer is so broad. And if you look at the different types of serial killers that are out there, and I think we'll probably be talking about those a little bit later on, but they have different motivations, different victims, different weapons that are used. And so I think where the experts are going to go in the future is taking that term serial killer and maybe breaking it down into, it could be 10 types, it could be 100 types. I don't know what it'll actually be. But I think when we do that, we're really going to get a much better understanding because we're mixing together a lot of people that are really dissimilar.
Yeah, that's interesting. And especially breaking them down into little subcategories will definitely show how there can be so many different, I guess you could say, personalities that participate in killing a certain amount of people. We think of as you put it, if there is such a thing, a traditional serial killer, right? You don't necessarily think of a member of you could say like the Southside Locos here in Oklahoma City. You don't really think of them as being a serial killer until you really break it down. And then you're like, wow, it's pretty thought provoking, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining me on Crime Country as we went over the serial killer database, statistics, and so much more involving the true crime subjects that we are all fascinated and oftentimes terrified by. To all of my subscribers, don't forget to check out the links in the video description below. It'll take you to the database, serial killer statistics, and all of the awesome work that Dr. Aamodt is doing. Dr. Aamodt, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.